Hi everyone, welcome back to the Helpline. I'm Seema Anand and I'm over here today with Deepa Paul, who is the author of Ask Me How It Works, Love in an Open Marriage. And we're going to be talking today about not just open marriages and how they work and all the logistics and the challenges around it and all the wonderful things that can also come out of this. But the reason that I reached out to you, Deepa, was I wanted to talk to somebody who was from my cultural background. I find that most of us talk about open marriages or polyamory. The voices that we hear are of a very particular community, and I believe that the way that we face sex and intimacy is so cultural. And so I really, really wanted to talk to you about this. So thank you so much for coming on here to chat with me.
It is such a delight and such an honor, and it's truly a joy to be here, and I can't wait to dive in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I think, Deepa, I get a lot of questions on polyamory, on people wanting to explore polyamory, on people a little nervous because their partner wants to explore it, but they're not ready for it. I get people then talking about open marriages, and again, somebody wants it, somebody doesn't. How would you go ahead with it? But I think the first thing I'd like to do is, should we set some definitions? Because your book says open marriage,
Right.
very specifically, not polyamory. Is there a difference? Like, what is the difference?
Okay, so the overall kind of umbrella term that's generating all this interest is non-monogamy.
Okay.
And very simply put, it's a paradigm outside monogamy where you can have multiple connections in many different ways. So I started out with an open marriage, which is basically, marriage in which we allowed each other, we gave each other the freedom to explore different connections quite casually without the promise of emotional intimacy. So emotional intimacy was off the table in the beginning.
So that you did not want to explore emotional intimacy with anybody else, that your
Right.
idea was that you wanted to be emotionally intimate just
With each other.
with each other.
Yeah, and this was in the beginning. This was, giving each other the freedom to explore casual connections, to set boundaries. I'm jumping ahead here. To set boundaries around emotional intimacy, so that we wouldn't develop with other people.
Okay.
And I've been in an open marriage for 9 years now, so it's quite an evolution. And throughout this exploration, I discovered that I fundamentally am polyamorous, which simply means, for me at least, the capacity and the ability to be in multiple sexual and romantic and intimate relationships.
Where there is an emotional connect.
Where there's an emotional connection and a romantic connection with more than one person. And it's not just that I can do it, but I actually find it pleasurable and fulfilling. Right?
Wonderful. Okay, so what we're saying is that the umbrella term is ethical non-monogamy,
Yeah.
or
Non-monogamy.
just non-monogamy.
Because we don't say we're ethically monogamous, right? Or
Yeah.
I'm
Is it-
ethically female.
I think that the reason for that is because I also get a lot of people who wish to explore outside, and even though the partner has said, no, I'm not ready for this, they will go out and do this anyway. And a lot of partners have asked, does that count as cheating still if they've gone ahead and done it when I've said no? And so it's really important for them to understand that, yes, if that's not something that you have both agreed on,
Yes.
then it does come under cheating. So that's why I bring up the word
The ethics is
ethical.
all around consent, right?
Yes.
One of the other terms that I really love that I hear is consensual non-monogamy. So
Yes.
there's non-consensual non-monogamy where you've done something outside the bounds of our agreement, and there is consent where both of us or more have come to this and agreed on.
I like that.
Yes, yeah.
I like
consensual
that word.
non-monogamy.
And that's the one that I'm going to use from now. We're going to be consensually
Consensual.
non-monogamous
Yes.
or consensually monogamous. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's so many different flavors of non-monogamy, well, consensual non-monogamy. So, for example, there's swinging,
Okay.
where
yeah.
it's partner swapping. It's all about sex. Typically, it happens at sex parties. There's swinging communities where, it's typically a heterosexual couple that will exchange partners. There's a really interesting flavor called monogamish,
Yes.
where it's mostly monogamous, and maybe you have one night a year where
Yeah.
you can have an adventure and consensually again
Yeah.
agreed. There's also don't ask, don't tell, where we've
Yeah.
agreed that we can do this, but you don't have to tell me because it's too much for me. There's an amazing non-monogamy educator named Ruby Rare who has coined the term sexy friends, where
Okay.
you're all friends, but sex is one of the tapas on the table that you can grab at any time. So what I chose in the beginning was to have an open marriage. What my husband and I chose was to have an open marriage. And then I discovered this ability to love more than one person.
That's amazing. So, just going back to the idea of definitions, etc., I just wanted to know, when you first start on the journey of non-monogamy, were there enough terms and words and definitions that you could use? Because I'll tell you what, for me, I find if somebody says something to me, I automatically cling to my meaning of that word. You know, words come with their baggage.
Right.
And everybody does that. Everybody has an idea of what that word means to them, which is why we have so much miscommunication, I
Right.
guess. It's only when a language is completely dead that you can have just the one meaning for it.
Right.
So words like open marriage are so wide, and they've been sort of treated by society as such bad terms almost. Did you face that in explain? Because I read your book. It's an incredible book. I want to tell everybody that they need to go out and get this book. It was an education, not just about open marriages, not just about polyamory, but about feelings and emotions. I learned so much about jealousy and insecurity and what it means to us and where it comes from. I learned so much of it from your book. So thank you for
very
that.
kind of you, Seema.
But I know from your book that you were, between the two of you, you were the first one to want to explore. So when you presented this idea to your husband, were there issues around the terminology that bothered him?
Well, it's really interesting because I came into it so naively. So just to backtrack, I'm from the Philippines. I grew up in the Philippines with an Indian father and a Filipino mother. And then I moved to Amsterdam with my husband shortly after we were married. And when I came into this culture in the West, the terms were all flying about and I didn't know what they meant. I would just hear like a whiff of, someone said to me, my wife and I are active in the scene. And I would sort of nod along and just say, what does that? Okay, what does that mean? We're in the lifestyle. And it's like, okay. And people would say, oh, we're having threesomes. What is a threesome? So all of these terms were kind of tantalizing in the beginning as names of things, experiences that I wanted to have and were curious about. So when I first approached my husband, it wasn't to have an open marriage. I didn't even know such a thing existed. In Filipino culture, there's no divorce. It's one of 2 remaining countries in the world where divorce is illegal.
Still?
Yes. The other one being Vatican City. So not a lot of people getting married there. So monogamy was the only thing there. Nothing existed outside of monogamy. And so I came to Europe. I came to this Western culture, and I was like, what are all these things? I want to try all of them. And my husband wasn't receptive to it because it was very outside of his paradigm of what a good marriage was, and a good man, and a good husband, and a good wife. And then later, when I started to learn more about these things on my own, I saw, okay, more and more terms started to come to me, but even then open marriage wasn't one of them. So at some point where the choice came for us to really reevaluate, I'm not going to give away everything that happens in the book, but we did come to a crux where a choice really needed to be made, and we had to assess each of our needs and how our marriage was fulfilling them and not fulfilling them. We agreed to set up Tinder profiles.
Okay.
And we thought, okay, this answers my Deepa's need for adventure and sexual variety, and knowing about it, answers my husband's needs for honesty and transparency and stability. We didn't even know it was called an open marriage. Like, we thought we were inventing something new. I Googled no search terms. I read no books. I listened to no podcasts. This was 9 years ago. and you had to work very hard to find these resources. But if you didn't know what the thing was named, how would you look?
Yeah.
It was only maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, people would start to suggest, books. Oh, you should. And then I learned, oh, this is what it means. Oh, we're in an open marriage. Oh, I think I'm polyamorous and you're still mostly monogamous. And so the discovery of the language was gradual, but what the transition to an open marriage was based on was really a re-evaluation of each of our needs. I was married in my 20s, and how much of us really knew ourselves in our 20s? What we wanted out of life, out of love, out of sex, out of relationships. And so I think we were already maybe 10 years married then. A crisis led to a point where we could actually step back and reevaluate. With 10 years life experience and marriage experience, what do we want now? How can we shift the rules a bit to adjust to our life experiences and who we are discovering that we are? And
that's really amazing. And I was just thinking that I wish that more people had the courage sometimes. I know it's a silly word to use, but the courage to say, okay, my life experience has changed, my desires have changed. How do I now reevaluate my relationships? And it's funny, I was just thinking, we don't do this. The reason I use the word courage is because we don't do it with our committed partners. I have a friend who she was my best friend. She was one of my best friends. We were, how when you're at university, your best friend and you were like this.
Yeah.
You do everything together. And we were both in our, I think, early 40s. And she turned around and said to me one day, if I'd met you today, I wouldn't be friends with you. You're not really the sort of person I would want to be friends with. And I was like, okay. I was a bit sort of taken aback because here am I thinking, I'm pretty nice. What's wrong with me?
I'm great.
Yeah. And the thing is, what's very sad is that she decided that, it was too much effort to put into our relationship. So she walked away from the friendship.
Right.
And when you say this, I just think, I wish that we both had the brain and the courage and the vocabulary to sit down and say, we have been such good friends through so much. Can we talk this through and decide what is it that's bothering us about this relationship?
I think it's interesting to have a reset of expectations. We enter into our married lives with such a weight of expectations from our culture, from our families, everything. And then we come into marriage and we're like, oh, well, this is what it actually is. It's not really how I pictured it. It's not really how I want it. But at the same time, you're supposed to say, I'm overjoyed now. I have everything. And it's the same with parenthood. I entered motherhood with a weight of expectations. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be happy all the time, but I'm exhausted and I'm miserable. And, so I think there is a reckoning of expectations that can happen in any relationship. And life changes are catalysts for new versions of ourselves to emerge. So for me, moving from Asia to Europe was one big one. Becoming a mother was another one. And so in an open marriage, at least in my open marriage, what I found is the fluidity for the rules to shift a little bit to accommodate the new versions of ourselves that are always being born. Who is it that said to love someone is to attend 1,000 births of the person
Oh wow.
they're about to become? I really need to look this up for you. I don't know if I saw it in a book or some Instagram meme somewhere, but to love someone is to attend 1,000 births of the person they will become.
That is so true and so well put.
And should a relationship, especially a lifelong commitment, remain rigid
And based on that one idea that you start with.
when you're 20?
Yeah, when
28 in my case.
I was 23 when I got married. Yeah, this year will be 40 years. So,
Wow.
and people say to me, "Are you happily married?" And I always say, "I think I'm comfortably married."
You do
Because
grow
you
into
go
it.
through, you go through so many ups and downs, and there are things about each other that you don't like, and things about each other that you learn to like, and there is just so much out there that is,
I think chase for happiness is also something really interesting, because if you ask me if I was happily married, I would say I don't chase happiness, I look for fulfillment. Am I in a fulfilling marriage? Absolutely yes. Am I in a fulfilling relationship with, this other person that I love, my boyfriend of now 5 years? Absolutely yes. But happiness is like, it comes and goes,
Yeah. It comes and goes in such waves, and there's no sort of linear path.
Mm-hmm.
Happiness can just turn and be something else at different times. I mean, so the questions that come in to me about consensual non-monogamy, I think the biggest question is always about your emotional boundaries and your emotional loyalty. The question is always, okay, we might decide that we're not going to fall in love with somebody else, but what if somebody does? What if my partner does? What if I do? And it can happen.
It has happened.
It has happened.
Hello, it's me.
But we also have this belief that you can only be in love with one person. And because of that belief, there is also that issue where we do divide. So if I suddenly say, I've fallen in love with you, it automatically means I'm no longer in love in the same way with somebody else. So of course there is that, but let's actually start at the beginning, because anybody who's going to try this, they're going to start from point zero.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to give them as much help as possible to build up from there. So I guess, how do you safeguard emotional intimacy? How do you make sure? I know that you've been in an open marriage for about 9 years.
Yes.
And you've got a 5-year long relationship, a committed relationship with an additional person. But the first 4 years, how did you keep that emotional boundary?
Right. In the beginning, because my husband and I had promised each other that our marriage and our family would always be the priority. In the polyamorous lexicon, that's called a hierarchical relationship.
Okay,
A hierarchical polyamory, and a lot of people are like, oh, that's also not ethical. But anyway, that's a whole other debate. So we agreed that our connections to other people that we would explore, we would create conditions so that emotional intimacy was less likely to occur. Because first of all, I have to say, it's a complete illusion to say you cannot and will not fall in love with someone, because feelings are messy, love is messy. Just be prepared for every possible thing to happen.
And the sensations that arise inside you when you're physical with somebody else, that's messy, because that just connects you to the other person whether you want it or not.
Right, but let's put a pin in that, because I also want to come back to those feelings that arise when we connect with somebody. They can be so strong and we think it's love, but is it really?
It not is.
Anyway, so in the beginning we said creating boundaries around time. So for example, we're both parents. At the time we started out, I think my daughter was 3 or 4. So naturally there was already this limit to how much time we could spend with another person. A date would typically be a few hours, like a dinner drinks date if more happened. The more time you give to something, the more kind of wildness you let in.
The more you build it up.
The more you build it up, the more where you give your attention to growth. So we agreed that we would have dates once a week at the most, for just a few hours a week. At the time, my husband felt waking up next to each other is very, very intimate. I want to keep that special thing just for us.
So staying the night.
Staying the night. No sleepovers. No, I was very happy to do that, to wake up in my own bed next to him. And I think, in there you already see limits around time and energy and attention. It has to be like a mutually agreed space between the two of you, because what I didn't realize when I first set out on my sort of dating adventure, it's so easy for women to get dates more than men. And I was quickly, I thought, oh, people won't find me attractive because I'm a mother, I'm invisible, Men didn't care. And I quickly realized, and I'm not bragging when I say this, I could fill up every night of the week with a new date if I wanted. So there had to be boundaries around how much time I actually spent away from home. So we decided those very quickly. And the other thing is about finding the special thing or things about your relationship and honoring those things. So, how it played out, for example, maybe I'm jumping the gun here, in my relationship with my boyfriend. He's a photographer, I'm a writer. We discovered one day that we were a very, very good team in the studio and we work on projects together. That is really special time. And I remember we had a discussion, about our own relationship agreements a couple of years ago. And I said, I think if you started collaborating with somebody in the studio, I would feel, that something was being taken away from us. So I never forbade him to do it, but he said, okay, if that comes up, I will let you know. If that opportunity comes up with someone, I will let you know. And it was never to forbid or control somebody's behavior, but I know this is a sensitive thing for you, a pain point for you, so I will take extra care around it. So that's how going back to my husband and I, that's how we began. And just really understanding what is special about each other that we want to honor and treasure and protect. And if an opportunity for that special thing comes up with somebody else outside the marriage, let's let each other know, because we know that is sensitive to us, that is sacred to us.
I like that point. And actually, I was going to say to you, so what are the practices that you put into place so that you could actually make sure, which you just responded to, actually. But I just want to say, so one of the things that I always say about, when somebody says that they're going to have an affair, or it's, and people are always like, oh, but then that means I'm absorbing somebody else's energy. And I'm always like, no, it's not. Energy is mobile, it's fluid. You're not absorbing somebody else's energy. What I do find is that when you are, let's say your partner has got somebody else in their life, somebody newer. Newness is always exciting.
Yes.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
Okay, and so there's a desire to be more playful, a little bit more flirty, a little bit more excited, energetic, all sorts of things with the new partner. And that's fine. For me, it is the energy that they bring back to you. So they've spent an entire evening being playful, flirty, energetic, exciting with somebody else. What are they bringing back to you when they come back to you? What is the energy that they're bringing? Are you then the recipient of this
leftover tired, exhausted
energy? And so I guess what you're saying is that when you come back to your partner, there would be certain rituals in place to make sure that they feel equally loved and connected, that they're part of your life. So how would you keep that leftover energy from happening, and actually wonderful energy from happening?
Yeah, what we learned to do pretty early on was to give each other a buffer time.
Okay.
So if I was coming back from a date and my husband would be at home with our daughter parenting, he, as soon as I walked in the door, he would give me time to land. It wouldn't be like, here's the child, make dinner, you've been this goddess and this kind of sex pot somewhere else, and then suddenly you're mom again. There is a time to land. And we learn to give each other that time by just, it's just an extra, maybe an hour, a couple of hours. You take your shower, you decompress, you digest your, adventures and experiences, and then we will come together again. But it's not this feeling of like, oh my God, you've just walked in the door, like bang, here's everything. And I think it should be like that with every activity. We need time to land coming home from work. We need time to land coming home from a holiday and reintegrating into reality. So we give each other that time. That's a practice. And then we also, I really knew that my husband had started to come around to non-monogamy when one day he came up to me and he had said, I have this theory. And I said, you created your own framework around it. This is great. You're really getting into it. And he said, we have our own bubble. And everything that happens outside our bubble is not within my control. But what's within our bubble, we can keep investing into. So what feels good in our bubble that makes it strong? For us in the beginning, it was like Yeah, a lot of laughter. We go out on a date once a week, and just to be us and not mom and dad. Um, Cooking together, eating together. I mean, these things kind of fortify our bubble, so that he's not trying to control all of the things outside of his control, but only what's within us. And I think learning what comprised our bubble made us appreciate it more. It made us think, okay, what are the acts and rituals and experiences that really connect us to each other? Parenting is a huge one. I mean, it's very intensive, but the joy of seeing our daughter grow and sharing that joy together was an experience we will not have with anybody else.
I always used to think that as a much younger mother, that when my husband come home from work, the little tiny things that my kids would have done, the things that mean nothing to anybody else, they meant something to him.
And only him.
Only him.
Yeah.
And so I would wait to tell him about those little tiny things, and that was a huge connecting point. So yeah, I can understand that. And yes, I totally agree that time and space to land, very important. My mother, who was a working person all my life, had that rule when she got in from work. I was away at boarding school. It didn't matter. I went to boarding school when I was 5 years old. It didn't matter that I was there home from boarding school. That first 1 hour was hers.
Great.
Yeah, even though I was really little and I was waiting for her, because the rest of the evening she was fully
available,
yeah,
fully present.
She was fully committed and present with me. But that first 1 hour needed to be her time. I think that is so important. But we kind of look at people and this idea of wanting your own time is almost seen as a betrayal.
I think for women especially, it's so hard for us. I mean, your mother's a really strong woman to really take that 1 hour. For me, it's one evening a week, and to some people that feels like, oh, you're neglecting your children, you're neglecting your husband, your family. But we are so not used to taking extra time for ourselves that even a little bit it feels like an abandonment.
Yeah.
And sometimes I like to think of the husbands who are working out at the gym every night, or riding their motorcycles all day Sunday. I see all of these motorcycle clubs. I don't know if they have them here as well. They take the whole day.
Yeah. It's like, this is me time.
Yes.
This is my man cave time. Yeah.
And if we took the same amount of time, we are entitled to the same amount of time, and leave them with the children. But the thing is, what makes my time so contentious, I guess, is it involves sex. And that's a very taboo and contentious and kind of prickly topic. Yeah, but if you look at it just as blocks of time, this is my block of time for myself. I can do whatever I want with it. I can knit. I can, I can run a marathon. I can learn how to play the cello. Or I can
have sex. Yeah. You can have bloody good sex, that's
in a really fulfilling relationship.
Yeah. I think that's just, and I think that also comes hugely from cultural conditioning, doesn't it? It does. Absolutely. In some cultures, it is even more taboo for the mother to have time out than in others. In some places, you accept it, and some places it's even more difficult. So
right,
yeah, which of course brings me to the next point, exactly about cultural expectations. So we talked about how you grew up in the Philippines, with partly Indian, partly Filipino family, where the cultural expectations of a woman are pretty
very narrow, very
right?
Narrow,
they're constrained.
Yeah.
How did that actually, because that would have really shaped the way that you think about marriage. It would have shaped the way that you think about fidelity and so on. So I just want to know what it took for you to break out of that. Like, how easy or difficult was it to... I still get young women from India writing saying that, and these are young women who are now in their mid-20s or late 20s, who are like, I'm a feminist, I totally believe in my time, I believe in my right to also date whoever I want, but I also I'm dying of guilt under the good girl syndrome.
Oh, yeah,
You know?
Yeah.
And that doesn't go very easily. So I just want to know how that played into your life.
Well, growing up in the Philippines with my mom, my father passed away when I was really young. I think what I saw was my mother is a very unusual woman. She had a lot of autonomy for her time, and also she's not very traditional. But I also, would hear a lot of stories of her and my dad, and they were also not very typical.
Mm-hmm.
So in my family culture, I believe we're shaped by family culture and societal culture. In my family culture, I saw a woman could do anything, had a lot of autonomy and power. Marriage was an adventure made for a team. And then I grew up and I stepped into this very restrictive Filipino Catholic school environment where what I saw was quite different. I said, what's going on here? Women are supposed to be meek and obedient and hide their bodies, and it's not what I grew up with. So I always felt at odds. That like the core of my understanding of love and being a woman and being in a relationship was different from what I saw in my environment. And for me, there was always this suspicion and kind of disconnect, and keeping my thoughts to myself, because if I tell anybody that I don't really believe in the one, I'm going to get stoned here. I think it took some time for me to find a space where I felt comfortable with my views, in a multiplicity of views, for example. And that really happened to me when I moved to Amsterdam. I don't want to give people advice and say, oh, do you want to do all of these things? Move somewhere else. But for some people, that's what happens.
Yeah.
So I found a space where a multiplicity of views could be, seen and accepted. And I said, oh, it's safe for me to think these things here. There are other ways of being a woman than what I saw growing up that feels more attuned to what I saw with my mother. I would like to live in this kind of space. So even if you don't move somewhere, sometimes it just takes finding a community, around you.
Which is now, touch wood, with the internet,
Easier.
becoming easier to
Mhm.
find that community, and I think that's
Mhm.
fantastic. But I will also say that it's really important to find the right community.
Yes.
Because we do also get a lot of people who are in it just for let's try it, and then the practices, unfortunately, are neither safe nor fulfilling, and
Or
it
nor
can be
supportive.
or not
right?
supportive,
Yeah.
and it can
Yeah.
be a problem then.
Yeah.
But so you discovered that there was a different way of looking at a strong marriage
Mhm.
than just what we had
Right.
all been fed,
Yeah.
because we have been fed this for a long time.
Yes, like with my parents, I always, my interpretation of their kind of adventures as they were falling in love and then starting out in life, that they were really a team on an adventure. And then outside in the world, it was like your husband is, the boss, and you are meant to serve him and give up your entire identity. And I said, wait, but that didn't happen in my house. I don't want to do that. I want to do this other thing. So that's very much I guess I didn't buy into the societal views, I think, which made me, I'm not a very good girl in the eyes of society, but I think I always remained true to what I learned, like at my core, from my parents and from my mom.
I also think that if you can actually change things around to create a stronger relationship or a stronger bond, which is fulfilling and gives you both a sense of security, happiness, contentment, whatever it is, and then your family around you, your child, your parents, your family. I think that's what we really all should be aiming for, but we've all been fed the one narrative.
Yeah.
So it's always a bit difficult. Now, I want to come to something that you talk about a lot in the book, which is jealousy. Because we had this, you write in your book about how we're fed the one narrative about jealousy and partnership as well, that if you love your partner, you have to be jealous. And the more jealous you are, the more aggressively, violently jealous you are, the more you love your partner. That means you're more passionate about them. And which is a load of crap.
Absolutely.
But jealousy is still a very real emotion. and we can't control it. Whether we've been conditioned to think it or not, we cannot control it. And then there is also a point in your book where you talk about it from the other side. So there's feeling of jealousy. And then you're worried about not feeling the jealousy and thinking, does this make me a bad partner? Or does this mean I'm not in love with my partner? Can we talk a little bit about jealousy? Because, I think that for most people, the thing that gets in the way of exploring consensual non-monogamy is the feelings of jealousy, the feelings of insecurity, which are even more strong, the feelings of fear, which come in. So, and you've written a lot about that. So can we talk a little bit about the jealousy?
It's interesting because most people come to me and, when the topic of open marriage comes up, a very, very common reaction I get from people is, oh, I could never do that. I'm a jealous person. As if jealousy was a personality type.
Yeah.
It's like saying, oh, well, I can never enjoy comedies because I'm an angry person. Or, I don't like eating out with my friends because I'm a sad person. Jealousy is a feeling. It's a feeling just like grief, frustration, sadness, anger, and like every feeling, it can be managed with commitment, right? Like we have to give it, all feelings are valid and we give them ourselves the time to feel them. But at some point, you have to say, I will not let this feeling dictate my actions or run my relationship or take something away from me, which is the love and connection that I feel with my husband. In the same way that if we've lost somebody, we have this grief, we sit with our grief, we experience our grief, but at some point we will also say, I cannot let this grief control my life. I cannot let this grief take the place of everything good and beautiful and loving and wonderful that I have about my life. I have to live my life. So that's how I see jealousy. It's a feeling. I guess the way I would think about it is, it's the fear of losing or the fear of being abandoned. People find the idea of non-monogamy very threatening because if my partner suddenly has all these other options, what if they discover I'm actually the worst one that they've picked and they pick a new one? In my world, I will never have to really choose because I can have multiple connections. I can say, yes, I have my husband, but I don't have to leave my husband for someone else because I can kind of work it out that I have both. And I have, and that's my life for the last 5+ years. So the feeling that somebody has something over me that will make me the loser in this game, whether it's, I felt it a little bit when my husband went out on his first date and it was with a 22-year-old girl, and I said, oh my gosh, all of the things of youth, the glowing skin, the everything. And I said, oh, if this is his type, well, I'm only ever going to get older. But what I had at the time was such a sense of security that I would not be abandoned by my husband. Not because we had promised each other in vows. I mean, we had been married, I think at that point, for up to 10 years. So there was a lot of that, like, trust and love and familiarity and compatibility built up. But it was, and I sound maybe a little megalomaniac when I say this, I knew what I was bringing to the table as his partner. That it's like, a knockout 22-year-old with glowing skin and perky things will, I knew what I brought to his life. So I was like, yeah, why would anyone give me up in a way?
I think that's wonderful. I wish everybody could feel like that.
I don't feel like that every day, but maybe I was just, he caught me on a good day.
Good.
Yeah. So I had a lot of confidence in what I brought to the table as his life partner, and being assured of that role. I would be like, yeah, okay, I'm the life partner. You can go have a partner for Saturday night. That's fine, because I was very, very secure. So on the flip side, I mean, this is now bonus content because this is not in the book.
Okay.
But later on, when I fell in love with my boyfriend, and he started dating as well. He went on a couple of dates, and the experience of jealousy really knocked me off my feet. It was, I think, maybe the first time I had been so jealous that I couldn't see straight. And I remember feeling, oh, I'm not really polyamorous. Like, I do have, sometimes people think, oh, jealousy is a gene, and if you don't have it, you can enter these kinds of open marriages and open relationships. No, it's not. It's just a human feeling. And I remember thinking, oh my God, have I just been lying to myself this whole time? But it was because the security of that relationship was very different from the security I had with my husband. My boyfriend wants to start a family of his own someday, and I said, I'm not available for this. I'm not going to be the mother of your children. So you can fall in love, I always tell him, you can fall in love with some girl you meet at the supermarket tomorrow, and she could be your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know our relationship would end. So there is always this precarity in the back of my mind. It is an insecurity that I can live with.
Okay, yeah.
But it was very, he'd had this date, he'd had a fling in Berlin, and I was just like, oh my God, what if he falls in love with her and sells his house tomorrow and moves there? And, your mind goes into all of these worst case scenario, like, situations. It just keeps generating these things. And he was like, of course I'm not going to sell my house for this woman that I met, like, yesterday. And then communicating with each other and saying, I'm really afraid this will happen. And it gives the other person the chance to say, that's ridiculous. Of course not, because ...
Mm.
So,
or it could happen, but in this way, which means that it is controllable by you in this way.
Yeah. Sometimes, when I remember thinking, oh, the fear that I have expressed is so ridiculous. Your mind will really come up with the worst things.
Yeah.
Because that's what it does. It is wired to sense threats. And so you respond to them. I mean, that was in the days when, we were running from beasts and things like that.
But the brain's still wired like that.
The brain is still wired like that. So just communicating what that fear was even helps to disappear it. And this was what my husband experienced with me. He said, when I fell in love with my boyfriend, it wasn't on the cards. And he said, I'm really aware that you don't want to leave me now. But what if this man is still in our life in 3 years? I think he even said 1 year or 3 years. And then you change your mind. And that is really scary because the future is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
And, well, now it's been 5, almost 6 years. It hasn't happened because I'm committed. I said, okay, possibly it could happen, but I'm committed to staying married to you for the rest of my life. And that is my intention. So we will work towards fulfilling that intention. I think the thing with jealousy is it can be so scary to confront what you are most afraid of.
Yeah.
What do I fear losing the most? I fear losing this special thing that made us, it makes us who we are. I fear losing all this time with you. I feel losing my place as your special one. But if you name it and you make ways, to address that fear, then that's how you start getting over jealousy.
Yeah. I think that's actually the thing that people don't realize that's what they're getting upset about when they feel jealous. It's not, jealousy is not like a thing just on its own. It's what you think will happen to you or to your relationship through a particular action.
Yes.
Am I going to stop being the main person? Are they going to stop being in love with me? Will this impact my relationship? How will this impact my relationship? And so on. So before we move on to the next question, one little tiny tip at all for our audience on how to deal with jealousy? Anything that you can think of that you did for yourself?
The first thing is, it's a very visceral and very strong feeling. Breathe. Feel it in your body. Don't make any decisions while you are in the grip of this feeling. I cannot remember where I read it again, where I read something which says any emotion actually takes only 90 seconds to be felt in the body or something like that.
Oh, really?
Okay. It's a certain amount of time, but
Okay.
a feeling only remains in our body for a certain period of time.
Okay.
If you, it's totally unscientific, the number I just threw at you, but if you manage to stay grounded and not make any rash decisions or say hurtful things while you are in the grips of this feeling, it will pass.
So I think what you mean is that when it sort of gets to that point, maybe there's a limited amount of time that it stays like this.
All feelings change.
Yeah. So it'll become slightly less. Maybe
Yes.
it gets replaced by fear. Maybe it gets replaced by resentment. Maybe it gets replaced by a million other things. But
Or
yeah.
if you're like me with my butterfly ADHD brain, you're like, oh, you know,
Something else. Ooh.
distract yourself, you know, move, distract yourself, like let the feeling pass, name it. Oh, I feel jealous right now.
I think that is so important. People don't actually say it, they,
Mhm.
you know, because it's also seen as a taboo. Like, oh, it's bad to be jealous. Like,
Mhm.
especially for a woman, it's bad to feel. If you look at any of our films, if a
Mhm.
man is jealous, it's because he loves you so
Yeah.
much. When the woman is jealous, she's just irrational.
Yeah, she's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so name the feeling, acknowledge the feeling, and then it will pass. It always passes. Like any feeling. I do a morning pages practice every day, journaling through 3 pages by hand. And what I feel at the beginning when I'm like, I feel terrible. Blah, blah, blah. By the end of the 3 pages, which is not even 20 minutes later, I already feel something else.
Yeah.
So feelings are fleeting, even though it's so, and
Even though it's so powerful at that moment.
Yeah. So the more you're used to dealing with it, you recognize it. Oh, this is that feeling again, but it passed the last time. And then be aware of what makes you feel safe. You can make a request of your partner. Hey, I'm feeling really jealous right now. I think what I need is more time with you. You know?
Or I think what I need is an assurance that you're not going to bring this relationship to an end. Or I think I need this assurance that if you do, that it will not impact my position in this home, for instance, or whatever. I think it's really important to understand what it is that you fear might happen.
Yes, and there's there's 2 of you working at this. You can work on it on yourself by yourself and kind of self-soothe with what moves you out of difficult feelings, whether it's journaling or taking a walk or distracting yourself with going out with friends. And then you can also ask your partner, hey, please contribute to lessening this feeling for me. We'll work at it together. But it's always like a 2-way. You are a team. You are a team handling these feelings together. Just as you are a team sharing this adventure together, you are also sharing the challenge.
Very true. Let's talk about the difficult one of logistics. Now, whatever we might say, everything is wonderful, everything can become wonderful, but there are certain functional, fundamental, practical things that come up. And one of the things that always, for me, I always wonder about is finances.
Okay.
Finances and STIs, actually, that's 2 things.
Okay.
But finances in terms of, okay, you may decide that I am going to just be dating somebody and then coming back home. So I'm not committing to them. You might decide that there is a certain commitment that you make to somebody. Either way.
Right.
Let's say that most households today have a joint income. So you both bring something to the table.
Right.
When you start being with somebody else, there is bound to be a certain amount of finance that is spent. If one of you decides, well, I do have 2 romantic partners, that means that there is another relationship there as well. Is some of that money then going towards that? Because that relationship also has to be bolstered or supported. How do you deal with the financial side of things?
Okay. Speaking from my experience, so my husband and I are fiscal partners. We have a joint income, we contribute to household expenses together, we contribute to shared goals such as savings, our mortgage, things we want to do in the future. I think this is a way that we only have, we've agreed to have it only with each other. Someone told me recently, I was with a fantastic speaker on a panel, and they said, it's like tapas. You have a relationship, you sit down and you see, okay, this is being a fiscal partner, this is being a romantic partner, this is being a sexual partner, this is being a creative partner, this is being a sporting partner. And then when you sit down at the table with someone that you enter in a relationship with, you talk about what's on the table. I don't want to be fiscal, sorry, this was fiscal partners. I don't want to have shared commitments with you. We are not going to play sports together.
Okay.
Sex is on the table. Intimacy is on the table.
Mm.
I am not going to have children with you. So all of those agreements are made at the beginning, I would say. And so for my boyfriend and I, for example, it was very clear we were not going to share finances. We started out as a casual connection, and then at some point he said, what would it look like if we were more? Or I said, what would it look like if we were more? He said, oh, I'd like to sleep over once a week. Like, the expectations were very clear.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is excellent to do in any relationship.
True.
To check the expectations before we enter into that commitment. Are we just carrying the expectations we have inherited? Do we have expectations of our own? So for me, maybe the beauty and the difficulty of having kind of design your own relationships outside of the monogamous norm is, with monogamy there's like a straight path.
Mm-hmm.
We call it the relationship escalator. You meet and then you move in together, and then you have
and
this kind
even
of thing.
in there, the money is what will cause the biggest issues anyway. So I think talking through it is so important.
Yeah, so talk about your expectations in the beginning. For me, it's always been my husband is my physical partner. With my boyfriend, if we want to go on a trip together, we keep a separate an accounting of like, you paid for this, I paid for this, we settle our balances in the end. We keep the finances separate.
Okay.
And anything I spend towards a date is my gift. I have invited you to this concert, I'm paying for the tickets. Well, it's more, actually, it was a really good rule of his. He was like, if I invite you to something, I pay for it. So I have my own money as a woman who earns, and my husband has his own money, and we contribute jointly to certain things that we've agreed on together, but we have some discretionary income. And whether I want to spend it on, a frappuccino or a date, is my choice. Whether I want to spend it on a designer bag or a weekend away with my boyfriend is my choice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's actually quite a good way of sort of sorting it out, that whatever the commitments are that are already in place, they stay as they are. And then your discretionary or your liquid income that you have for yourself anyway is, because there shouldn't be any shortfall in what you have together.
Yes.
Okay.
So you contribute to the shared commitments first. At least we do.
Yeah. I think that's really important. STIs. How do you deal with this? How do you stay on top of this thing of testing, checking, etc.?
It's really, when we started dating again, because when I was growing up, it was always, the conversation was about safe sex.
Mm-hmm.
But when we re-emerged into the dating arena at the age of 35, suddenly it was about safer sex. So there is an implicit agreement that no sex is 100% safe, and by agreeing to this, you accept the risk.
Okay.
But there are ways to mitigate the risk. So, for example, we use condoms, barrier methods with everyone with no exceptions. We get tested every 3 to 6 months. And I think when you're not 17 and kind of, twisted up in shame anymore, an STI test just becomes like a dental appointment.
Yeah.
Or like doing my nails.
Yeah. So
we keep on top of this, and we know that if something happens, we can talk to each other like adults about, hey, this is my,
it's just, I had this couple write to me recently saying that as a couple, they want to start exploring sort of polyamory or even threesomes or foursomes or whatever. And it was the guy writing, and he said, but we're always a bit nervous about asking the other couple for their STI test because it feels a little bit weird. And I was thinking, no, it doesn't feel weird. You have to.
But what is your priority here? Is it about making these strangers comfortable with you? Or is it about safeguarding your sexual health with your partner? Bear the discomfort of asking these strangers. If they don't want to pony up the results, well, don't have the relations with them.
Find somebody else.
Find somebody else who's who's cool about this stuff. And I guarantee people who are educated and and relaxed and upfront about STIs will be better sexual partners.
And I think that I just want to say this again. Please just do this with everybody, whether you're going on a date, whether it's a decision that you made to have ongoing sex with XYZ at the same time, whatever it is. This is really important. Stop feeling like, oh my God, I have to explain this. How will I say this? It's not about shame, it's about your safety.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing, I'm conscious that we have very little time left for this, but I want to ask very quickly about this, is the boundaries. We set boundaries for our relationships, and I'm always advising people on how important it is to set boundaries before, to revisit those boundaries constantly. This conversation is always ongoing, and I noticed that in your book, at one point, you go from saying that we decided to set boundaries before to saying, no, it's okay. We're doing away with it from before. We're going to now set boundaries. We're going to do whatever we're doing and then talk about it afterwards. Mm-hmm. Can you talk us through this? Because I think that's a huge shift.
Yeah, it's interesting. So in the beginning, we had this, rule that if you decide to go home and sleep with someone, please tell me in advance. In the beginning, all of our dates were very well organized, I should say. It's really clear, okay, I'm going out with this person from a dating app and it's likely that sex will happen or not. So I can let you know beforehand. But as we gained confidence and experience and also trust in each other, the more dates we had, the behavior was reinforced that, he's really sticking to the agreements, I'm really sticking to the agreements. And then we started to be in more spontaneous situations.
Okay.
If I was at a party or something, or my husband was at a club, it was really not handy to text my husband at 3 a.m. and wait for a reply and say, hey, I think this is going this way with this guy, can I, and then you just be there. The moment is withering away. And so I think it was my husband who brought it up, who said, yeah, just go and have fun and tell me after. It was like a mark of trust in a way. This was not like this, I would say, it took us maybe two years to get to that point.
Okay.
At least a year.
But having built up the trust to that point where you thought, this was
because
okay.
We were being extremely reliable with each other up to that point. And then your sort of confidence and your security grows. And for us, it felt like, oh yeah, and also an empathy of, oh yeah, I know what it's like when you're in that situation and you're really attracted to this person, and gosh, what a wow, so frustrating to have to wait for it. No, I want you to have that experience. Like, go get it, and I think it was a real shift for sure. But it came from being very reliable with each other.
But do you also make sure that you do, however, talk about it after?
Yes. So
because that's still really important.
Yes. Or sometimes, there would be times where I would wake up in the morning to a text on my phone, and see, he texted me at 4 a.m, just like FYI. But of course, he wasn't waiting for a reply. Or in the morning, I would say, hey, how was your night? Or he would say, oh, how was your night? And I'd say, well, this happened. And then we would just, have a very, brief check-in about it. Hey, how was that? Yeah, it was fine. Okay, are you going to see this person again? Yeah, maybe not.
For me, that's a really interesting shift because, like I said, whenever we're trying to help people to set off on the path and do it right, I think in any relationship, boundaries is so important.
Yeah.
And we are always saying it's not just a conversation you have at the start, it's an ongoing thing.
Yes.
Consent boundary, consent boundary, consent boundary over everything.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to know that you can get to a point where that boundary seems to be a little bit easier, a little bit more malleable or flexible, as opposed to being very rigid.
Yes, and I think one thing to acknowledge here is that we cannot anticipate all the possible situations we could be in. There is no way to have a rule for every single situation You know, like even let's say, I don't know, learning how to drive a car. I mean, the handbook is like this. You take days of theory, but you are not prepared for any situation. If you go driving to us, you know, go to Australia and drive, and like there's kangaroo crossing the road. What do you do? Like, I mean, you cannot prepare for every single situation. It's good to think them through in advance. But what's more important as you gain more experience and trust in each other, you know, as you're doing this, is when you get into the situation, do you have the tools to communicate honestly about it with each other? Do you feel that it's safe to tell each other these things? Do you have the tools to repair in case a boundary was broken and someone
goes out?
Yeah. Do you have the tools to repair and reassure each other again and reconnect to each other again? I think that becomes more important as you gain experience.
I think that's really good advice, actually. So, last question for the podcast is that you have a little girl,
Yes.
and this is an unusual situation to be in. So, I just wondered, what are your concerns, your parenting concerns, or your parenting practical rules around something like this? Do you worry that she might be bullied because you are in an open relationship? Because you never know with kids. Or is it less of a problem now? Things have changed so much. I mean, do you have any advice for parents?
So we started out when my daughter was almost 4, and now she's 12. So it's a very different, very long evolution. In the beginning, it was simply about my sex life, or my personal life was what I did after she went to bed. So it was in a way easier to keep it under wraps. Yeah. But as she grew older, and you know, the boundaries of our relationship also expanded, I found that it was very important first to make her feel that our relationship as her parents was rock solid. She sees every single day that mom and papa love each other. We're very physically affectionate. We're very silly. We have a lot of laughs together. So she sees that, and that is the foundation upon which she builds her understanding of the world. So that when I said to her at some point, like I knew, I think she was 6 or 7 when I started sleeping over at my boyfriend's, and she knew what a sleepover was because she was already having it with her friends. So I said, I'm sleeping over, at Robert's house. And in her mind, she understood, oh, a sleepover is already, it's something fun that we do. And she said, have fun. And I said, I will. And the next morning, it was so, when I came back, she was mirroring behavior that I'd already done when she was coming back from a birthday party or a sleepover. Did you have fun? That's the first thing she asked me when I walked in the door. I said, I certainly did. So first understanding what your child knows and then building upon it. There's no need to make a grand announcement. This is not a train station. We are now in an open marriage. If I had made this statement to her when she was 4, when we started, what would she have done with it? But what she needed to know was that mama and papa love each other, and when we fight, we have, we argue, we have the tools to work it out, and we always come back to each other. And when we fight, it's not because of her. She's, and we love her very much. This is all children really, really need. And I think we are able to create this very safe home environment and family environment for her. There are no naked bodies in the living room and piles of used condoms, and she has to pick her Lego blocks from them. This is not the situation. It's a lot less X-rated than most people think. And I'm not worried that she's going to be bullied. Maybe because, well, one thing is we live in Amsterdam. It's a very open, tolerant society. A lot of different lifestyles and viewpoints. There are a lot of rainbow families, in her class and our neighbors as well. So how I explained it to her at some point was, we are doing something that is a bit different, just like this other family and that other family. But it's not a reason not to do it. Whatever people say is not a reason not to be yourself and to do what is you feel is right for you. And yeah, I'm speaking very openly about my marriage now because I have a book, but I am in UK media, and I assure you, Dutch teenagers do not give a toss about the Daily Mail or the Times. They are not going to spend their phone time looking this stuff up. You know, there are cat challenges and new aesthetics and, you know, cat videos or whatever that is so much more interesting to their lives than mama's work.
I asked this because my work is a little bit unusual, as you know, and I think for me it's always been interesting in the fact that my kids, two of my three kids are in committed relationships now, and they're very protective about me. So they will make sure that their partners' families, etc., everybody understands what my work is. It's still a little bit unusual for, like I said, for a lot of people, but they do this because they want to be really protective of me. They don't want me to be hurt by somebody, either the partner's family member, saying something that might be considered mean. And so I just wondered, you know, like,
it's very loving of them.
I just think it's wonderful. They've been amazing, and I'm sure that it's not been terribly easy either, because every now and then you get teased, bullied, whatever. There is an element of difference that people will point out sometimes in not the best ways. But yeah, I think that the more young children understand it and the more they come to learn to live with it, I think it'll be fantastic. I remember when I was 5 years old at boarding school, I remember being bullied because we were talking about parents one day, and I said my parents call each other darling, and I was bullied for a year for that. Yeah, but you have to remember, I'm almost 63, because back then that was like, oh my God, how could you, you know? So in a relationship where, you know, it was, people did not say darling to each other.
But I think the trend, well, maybe not the trend, but maybe I'm optimistic, but I see things being more open now. Like when I talk to, for example, you know, I go raving, like I go clubbing, and I see ravers who are like 22, 23, 24. They already know that non-monogamy is one of the options they have.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know when I started out, and I didn't even know until 10 years ago. So they already know, yeah, I can choose that, or I can choose monogamy, or I can choose whatever relationship style I want. All of the stigma is already taken out of it for them. And so my daughter at 12 understands what an open marriage is, and she knows, and she's not the only one. I mean, in her class, you know, they are so much more aware of it. So the stigma is not there for them that is there for me, or was there for me, or was there for your parents, or so maybe they'll bully each other over different things.
There were different things, yeah.
Different things.
Unfortunately, that will happen.
Unfortunately, but that's, you know, that's life.
I just think that I wish that we could have this level of comfort in all the different cultures, but I guess a lot of us have a lot of catching up to do when it comes to that, when it comes to understanding. But I hope that everything that you shared with us is going to be useful for somebody else out there who's trying to find their feet, who's trying to find the vocabulary, who's trying to find the rituals and the practices to go forward. So I really want to say thank you for that. That was amazing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
It's been such a pleasure talking to you. If anybody wants to get in touch with you in case they have questions, is there a place where they can reach out to you?
Absolutely. So I share my writing on Substack at deepa.substack.com. I write about the intersection of all my different identities: mother, you know, lover, wife, girlfriend, writer, and I'm also on Instagram as Stories by Deepa.
Great. So those are the details that we'll put in the caption anyway, so you'll know where to reach out to Deepa. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you found it useful, do as always comment, like, subscribe, and if you have any questions, I am as always on info.seema.anand@gmail.com. Stay safe, stay well, and I will see you back here very soon.